Hi, and welcome to the Canvas Church podcast, where you can listen to our weekly sermons. Thanks for joining us on this journey as we look to God's Word to mold us into people becoming the church.
So this series, Chasing After, that we're in, we've made it real clear from the very beginning that we've got a very simple goal as a church. The goal behind this series, as we're working our way through the book of Ecclesiastes, is this: that each one of us individually, we're going to take a critical look at our lives. We're not pointing fingers. We're not working our way through this book so that we can determine who in our lives should hear this or should read this book, but rather, each one of us individually, maybe some good conversation as families, that we're taking a very critical look at our lives and looking at, what are we chasing after? Like, real honestly, just like bare bones, drill down on it, like at the end of the day, what are we chasing after? And then the follow-up question, when you begin to hone in on what it is you're chasing after, then to follow that up with another very important question: why am I chasing it? Why am I chasing after this thing? Now, there's a famous story about a guy named John D. Rockefeller. You may have heard of him. At one point, he was the richest man in the world. In fact, if tradition is right, in the book of Ecclesiastes is written by King Solomon and Rockefeller were likened to one another because of their means, because of their wealth, because of their riches. And as the story goes, at one point, after he had amassed amazing wealth, he was asked by a reporter, Rockefeller, how much is enough? How much is enough? And he famously replies to the question, how much is enough, with this simple statement: just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And I think that quote has lasted the test of time. And this is back in the 1870s when Rockefeller got his start. It's lasted all the way until 2025. And it's a very common quote these days because it really drills down to the heart of humans, doesn't it? Like, we might not have the wealth, we might not have the means, the resources that Rockefeller had at his disposal, but if we're real honest with ourselves, that's us also, isn't it? We think about the things that we're chasing after, and there's this little voice inside of our heads that tells us, how much is enough? Well, if I just had a little bit more, then I would have enough. And because we've bought into this, we chase after things, don't we? We chase after things like success. We chase after things like wealth, comfort, pleasure. Now, we're not chasing after these things necessarily because we're greedy. Like, I don't think any of us in here are necessarily greedy. We chase after them because we believed this idea that just a little bit more will finally be enough. Just a little bit more will finally do the trick. If I can just go on one more vacation, if I could just make one more purchase, if I could just get one more attaboy or one more accolade, then finally I will have the satisfaction that I need in these things. Isn't it amazing how that one little phrase, just a little bit more, gets lodged in the depths of our heart? It gets deep down inside of us. But somehow, and we're all familiar with this, even when we get just a little bit more, it's never quite enough, is it? It is such a frustrating endeavor to think, if I just get one more thing, if I just get one more accolade, one more success chalked up, one more notch in the belt, like one more thing, it will finally be enough. And then we get that thing and it's just never quite enough. So what happens is we end up living like a dog chasing our tails. Just running around in circles, getting close, almost catching it, but never quite. Have you ever watched a dog chase its tail? You chase it for hours on end. Why? Because it's just right there. If I could just get a little bit more, just a little more bend in the body, I could finally grab that thing and I'll finally have what I need. We chase ourselves around, but never quite catching that thing that is ultimately meant to satisfy us. But what if what we're chasing was never meant to be caught? What if we're chasing was never meant to be caught? Or what if a little bit more is just a lie? What if it's a lie that's been peddled to us by a culture that wants us constantly chasing our tail in circles? What if it's just a lie? And if it is a lie, then let me ask you this question: how much is enough? How much is enough? If just a little bit more is a lie, then how much is enough? And that's the question that I want rolling around in your brain as we work our way through Ephesians chapter 2 here in a minute. How much is enough? Right? We're taking a critical look at our own lives. That you begin to have a conversation, that you open yourself up even now to the Holy Spirit of God, challenging your current disposition when it comes to stuff, when it comes to success, when it comes to comfort, when it comes to wealth, when it comes to accomplishments, that he would challenge you from the inside. We're going to be looking at Ecclesiastes chapter 2. We're going to be verses 1 through 11 as we kick things off. And this is what the teacher has to tell us. He says, I said to myself, come on, let's try pleasure. Let's look for the good things in life. But I found that this too was meaningless. So I said, laughter is silly. What good does it do to seek pleasure? After much thought, I decided to cheer myself up with wine. And while still seeking wisdom, I clutched at foolishness. In this way, I tried to experience the only happiness that most people find during their brief life in this world. So I tried to find meaning by building huge homes for myself and by planting beautiful vineyards. I made gardens in the park, filling them with all kinds of fruit trees. I built reservoirs to collect water and to irrigate my many flourishing groves. I bought slaves, both men and women, and others were born into my household. I also owned large herds and flocks, more than any kings who had ever lived in Jerusalem before me. I collected great sums of silver and gold, the treasure of many kings and provinces. I hired wonderful singers, both men and women. I had many beautiful concubines. I had everything a man could desire. So I became greater than all who had lived in Jerusalem before me. And my wisdom never failed me. Anything I wanted, I would take it. I denied myself no pleasure. I even found great pleasure in hard work, a reward for all of my labors. But as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all so meaningless, like the chasing the wind. There was nothing really worthwhile anywhere, the teacher says. The teacher's pursuit in chapter 2 can be summed up with this simple line. I tried to experience the only happiness most people find during their brief life in this world. Maybe this is your first time here and you're not up to speed on this journey we've been on through Ecclesiastes. It's important for us to recognize, because it's very dystopian when you read it. It just is all hum glum, right? It's like, man, I feel really depressed after reading that. That the teacher only has in mind what he can see and observe here on this earth. Only has a human perspective in mind. Does not have God's perspective in mind. Does not have an eternal perspective in mind. So this statement, I tried to experience the only happiness most people can find during their brief life in this world, is, he says, if all there is the here and now, I set out to find all of the pleasure and happiness I can find in the here and now. Nothing focused on eternity. So in other words, he was trying to build his own personal Garden of Eden. He was trying to make heaven on earth. Now, as followers of Jesus, those of us who are followers of Jesus, we have been tasked to bring heaven to earth, meaning we're meant to bring healing and restoration to a broken and a lost world. But we were never meant to make earth our heaven. And that's what the teacher is trying to do. With his means, with his IQ, with all of the resources that he had at his disposal, he was trying to make his own Garden of Eden. But this time, inside of his garden, there was no forbidden fruit. There was nothing off limits. He was able to do whatever he wanted, like no restraint whatsoever. He gave himself fully over to pleasure, to the accumulation of stuff, to all of the success that he could find. He gave himself over with absolutely no restraint, just pleasure, possessions, and accomplishments, all in endless supply. But to his dismay, and is the case for us as well, he discovered the painful truth that nothing perishable will ever satisfy. Nothing perishable will ever satisfy. It cannot and it will not satisfy. It did not satisfy him and it will not satisfy you. Because it cannot and it was never meant to. So what I want to do together is I want to trace out his journey through chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. Because we can learn from the teacher. We can learn from him, right? We don't have to learn on our own. We can learn from him. Now, I am totally guilty of this. Maybe you can relate. As we're working our way through this, to think to ourselves, yeah, he didn't find the pleasure that he was looking for, but give me a shot with his resources and I think I'll be able to. Totally guilty. Like when people say money can't buy you happiness, I was like, I'd like to give it a shot. $1 million ain't gonna do it for you. Like, maybe I'm an anomaly. Maybe I'm an aberration from the norm. Like, I think if you gave me an opportunity, I might be able to make that work for me. But the truth of the matter is, the truth written in Ecclesiastes is as true for us today as it was for him then. Is that when we chase after those things, they just simply don't find us pleasure. But that's exactly where the teacher starts at. And it's generally where you and I start at. We start with this saying, come on, let's go find some pleasure. Let's go find some pleasure. And we find in that pursuit exactly what the teacher found millennia ago. And this is it. Pleasure cannot satisfy by chasing it. Pleasure cannot satisfy our souls by chasing after it. Now, when the teacher says, come on, let's try pleasure, this word pleasure is an important word for us to understand. In the Hebrew, it's this word called simcha. That's the way it's transliterated, simcha. And simcha could be translated into a couple of different words in our English language. One of the words being joy and the other word being pleasure. Now, joy, when you see the word joy and its Hebrew word is simcha, what it's trying to communicate is regardless of external circumstances, that we can have this joy and we can have a cheerfulness and we can have a happiness inside of our soul despite what's going on around us. That's an incredible thing. That's an incredible gift that we have as human beings. Even though the storm rages around us, we can have this internal happiness, this internal cheerfulness. Like you've been around those people, haven't you? They're like, all hell is breaking out in their lives, but yet they have this steadiness. They have this joy. They have this cheerfulness in their lives. Like, man, how in the world is that? They're experiencing simcha. The joy that comes that no matter what the external circumstances are, they remain cheerful, happy, and joyful. But when you see the word pleasure, and it's connected to this word simcha, it's a different kind of happiness. It's a happiness that only comes through external. It's this idea that when I get sensory inputs that I enjoy, then I find myself being happy. So it is this happiness that is completely reliant on the world around us being in good state. That we're constantly getting the kind of inputs into our sensory system in our brain that makes us feel happy. And when those things dissipate or when they disappear, then we find ourselves in the same state as the teacher. Meaningless, meaningless. It's all simply meaningless. And that kind of pleasure is tied to this belief system called hedonism, where I just keep running after sensory inputs, pleasure from the external that keeps me feeling happy on the inside. Friends, that will never pan out in the end. Why? Because pleasure cannot satisfy by chasing it. See, pleasure, interestingly enough, it begins to fade when it becomes the goal. When you're chasing after something to find pleasure in it, pleasure always fades in it. And we've learned this through brain science, what the Bible's been trying to teach us for thousands of years. In fact, inside of our brains, we have a couple of different systems. One is called the dopaminergic, that's the word. Say that 10 times fast. The dopaminergic system that runs on dopamine, that's where that word comes from. And then we have this opioid system inside of our brain. And the dopamine-driven system in our brain, it's tied to our desires and our wants. And then the opioid system in our brain, it's tied to this feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment. Now, here's what's very interesting about these two different systems. The one driven by dopamine, it is more dominant. It's more dominant. So it can override your feeling of satiation, your feeling of satisfaction. So as we constantly feed ourselves with this dopamine in hopes that we're going to somehow feel satisfied and fulfilled in life, it will never happen. Why? Because that system is more powerful than the opioid system. So it always dominates over the top of it. That's why when we're chasing pleasure for pleasure's sake, we will never be satiated in that pursuit. It's what's called the paradox of pleasure. The more you pursue it, the more elusive it becomes. Now, let me make this real simple for you this morning. You guys are all familiar with these two illustrations. You know that your second cup of coffee in the morning is never as good as the first, right? Isn't that first sip of coffee in the morning the best sip of the day? Or how about those of you who don't drink coffee yet? That first bowl of cereal in the morning? Isn't that the best bowl of cereal? I remember vividly as a kid eating that first bowl of cereal like that was so good. I'm going to have another. And then I'd fill up the bowl. I would do the exact same process. Fill the bowl, pour the milk over the top, take a bite. It's like, it's just not as good. Just not as good. Because what I was searching after is the same pleasure that I got from the first bowl of cereal. And when the pleasure becomes the goal, it always fades away. It always becomes more elusive. Why? Because pleasure cannot satisfy. Because pleasure is always seeking after more. Even if it's just a little bit more. Just a little bit more pleasure. If I get just a little bit more pleasure. But here's the deal for the teacher, when pleasure didn't deliver what it said it was going to, the teacher didn't give up. Like he kept on going. He just shifted focus. He said, okay, if pleasure can't fulfill me, then maybe, like if experiences won't satisfy me, maybe stuff will. Maybe if I just get enough stuff, then I'll finally be fulfilled. So what does he do? He sets out to build incredible mansions and gardens and irrigation systems to water his many fruit trees inside of his fields. Like he had whatever he wanted. He had the resources to buy every possible means of things in his day and age. He could build it. He could have somebody else build it. Like he amassed for him great wealth, silver and gold. He had fields and homes. He had servants. Like he had everything. He had the most beautiful concubines. Like he had it all. Hold no bar. No restraint on any of it. It's all his. He didn't just accumulate stuff like he built an absolute empire of abundance. He had it. He had it all. And do you know what he found out in accumulating all of that stuff? That possessions cannot fulfill by owning them. Possessions cannot fulfill by owning them. You see, possessions, they promise much but deliver very little, don't they? We've all been surfing on Amazon or Marketplace and just looking for that next thing, or perusing like some of you, I'm gonna see you in Costco later on today probably. I like to say Costco is where I go to find the things I didn't know I needed until I got there. And walk around and see this thing and it calls my name like, you really want me because I'm going to provide this, that, and the other, only to be let down. You see, the teacher accumulated everything that the wealthy chase after. And he was able to conclude, like the stuff before, that possessions, it's like chasing after the wind. When I chase after stuff, it's like chasing the wind. I cannot ever grab a hold of it. It is absolutely useless. But unfortunately, for us today, we're trapped in this rationalization mindset where we rationalize our purchases, where we tell ourselves, yeah, that was true for him, but it's not true for me because I absolutely need this thing, whatever this thing is. So we're unable to be honest with our purchases, what we are actually pursuing. When you're surfing on Amazon or Marketplace looking for that next thing to buy, can you be real honest about why it is you're there and why you're wanting to purchase that thing? I know for me, oftentimes when I push buy now, I get this hit of dopamine. It feels good. I love the fact that in 2 days, it's going to be on my doorstep. I get excited about a next book to buy. I've got more books that I've bought that I haven't read than probably all of you. And I keep doing it because it's just the one more book. Just need one more. And that's just for me. Like, I don't know what it is for you, but like, can you just be honest with the fact that when we continually are caught in this loop of purchasing stuff, we're trying to fulfill some void that can never be fulfilled because possessions cannot fulfill by owning them. They absolutely cannot. Possessions can't fulfill because once you own them, you want something new, even if it's just a little something new. And that's where I get nickeled and dimed to death. I've got a few hobbies: dirt biking, mountain biking, hiking, and I want you to know there is no shortage of nickel and dime things that I can buy. Just a new pair of gloves, just another pair of goggles, just another hat, like whatever it is. Like, I can get nickeled and dimed to death buying little one-off things along the way. And as soon as I get that thing, then I find something else that I need, something else that I want, something else that's going to give me a dopamine hit but has no ability to satisfy long term. So still unsatisfied, the teacher tries one more angle. It's like, if pleasure didn't work and possessions didn't last, maybe, just maybe, productivity will be my answer. Maybe if I can just accomplish things. So that's exactly what he sets out to do. He builds stuff. He expands his empire. Like, he gets to work doing some amazing things in hopes that finally, I will find some satisfaction in my life. It won't be like chasing after the wind any longer if I can chalk up enough accolades. So that's exactly what he begins to do. He begins to chalk up accomplishments like trophies on the wall. Fields, gardens, homes, like he did it all. But in the end, this is what he says about all of his amassing of the goods. He says, I became great. Not a lot of hubris in this guy. I surpassed all who came before me, he says. But when the applause faded and the work was done, he was still left asking, is this it? Is this all there is? Recently watched a Netflix special called Enigma. It's a documentary about Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers. And it kind of chases his dream of becoming a Super Bowl champion. And he finally accomplishes it. And it's amazing to watch the wrestling that's happening inside of him. Because when he finally accomplishes the one thing that his life mission was, he was left asking this same exact question. Is this it? Like, I have spent my life pursuing this and this. Like, before the Super Bowl party was over, the applause had faded and his heart sank with this meaningless. My whole life's work has been absolutely meaningless. And in fact, the documentary Enigma, it ends with Aaron Rodgers still in what I would consider a downward spiral, still trying to find meaning in this life, in looking for it in all of the wrong places. I'm guilty of thinking if I could finally accomplish that one thing on my list, then I would finally feel satisfied in this life. But let's learn from the teacher. Accomplishments may impress, but they will never satisfy the soul. They might impress the people around you. You might get great applause momentarily, but at the end of the day, they will not satisfy our soul. Why? Because accomplishments cannot fulfill. Why can they not fulfill? Because there's always one more thing to accomplish. When I get to that mountaintop, then I see another one that I want to go over. And it's a constant. Every time I get one accomplishment, there's something else left to accomplish. Even if that next accomplishment is just a little accomplishment. Just a little bit more. If I could just get a little bit more, then I will finally be satisfied. So here's the troubling realization that the teacher comes to. Just a little bit more is still not enough. It's still not enough. And we spend so much of our lives chasing after just a little bit more. And could we just pause long enough to learn from the teacher that it is still not enough? Why? Because nothing perishable, no experience, no possession, no accomplishment can ever satisfy, fulfill, or complete us. Never will, never can. Now, it's not because any of those things are evil. There's nothing evil about like possessions. There's nothing evil about accomplishment. There's nothing evil about experience or pleasure. In fact, our ability to enjoy pleasure is a God-given gift. There's nothing evil about those things. Nothing wrong. Like, don't walk out of here today thinking that I said there's something wrong with enjoying this life. There's not. Pleasure, possessions, and accomplishments, they are not the problem. The problem comes when we try to squeeze more out of them than they were ever meant to give us. When we put our hope, our identity, when we affix our hope and our identity to those things, they were never meant to carry that kind of weight. They cannot. They weren't meant for it. It's kind of like this truck that I saw 20 years ago driving down the road as a mid-sized truck, had a full-size camper in the back of it. And every time this truck went over a bump, the front wheels came off the ground. I'm not even kidding you. Front wheels came off the ground, and then they'd come back down and they kind of steer their way. It was amazingly bad. I could not believe my eyes. And what was going on in that truck? They put more on it than it was ever meant to carry. And because of that, it could not steer its way correctly through this life. And when we've put possessions and success and accomplishments and pleasures, when we've put all of life's happiness and contentment and satisfaction on those things, it's like putting too much on the truck. You cannot steer your way through life. At the end of the day, you're left wondering, is it all just meaningless? Is it just meaningless? And that's why in verse 24, the teacher shifts gears. And this is what he says in verse 24. So I decided that there is nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. Then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God. For who can eat or enjoy anything apart from him? See, the teacher, even though he's got this world in perspective most of the time, there's these moments where he comes back and he recognizes the simple things that God has given us. The ability to eat and drink with friends, and to sit down and to have a meal. Those are the sweetest things in this life. Those are gifts given by God. So God has wired us to be in community with one another and to enjoy the very simplest things of life, like food, like drink, like good conversation, like camaraderie. Like those are beautiful gifts. And here's what happens when we're chasing possessions and pleasures and accomplishments. We overlook the simplest things that God has given us as gifts. So let me ask one more time as we wrap this up. How much is enough? How much is enough? Have you accumulated enough accomplishments? Have you accumulated enough stuff? Have you accumulated enough pleasure? Have you had enough pleasure to finally realize it's time to simplify? It's time to identify what it is I'm chasing and why I'm chasing after it, and then begin to lean into God and say, God, I want to experience this life the way you meant it to be experienced. So I have 3 questions that we can ask ourselves as a takeaway from today. Number 1 is this, and this helps you identify like how much is enough. Number 1 is this: if I lost it all, what state of mind would it leave me in? Think about it. If you lost everything that you have, what state of mind would you be left in? Would you be distraught? Totally understandable, right? You lose it all, like there'd be a lot of anxiety around that. You'd be pretty bummed out and all that. But would it lead you to despair, complete and utter hopelessness, thinking there's no reason to go on because I lost it all? That kind of gives you a gauge on how much is enough. Where is your focus? Number 2 question is this: is my pursuit of pleasure, possessions, or accomplishments keeping me from focusing on more important things? Have I lost sight of the importance of relationships in my life because I'm chasing after stuff? Question number 3: am I able to rightly enjoy the simple gifts that God gives? Are you able to enjoy the simple gifts that God gives? Would you stand to your feet this morning as we close? And here's my hope. We walk out of this place and then we process. Just process. What am I chasing? Why am I chasing after it? Process it through those 3 questions and see what the Holy Spirit of God begins to do on the inside of you. So Jesus, thank you so much for your love for us. Thank you for this word, for the book of Ecclesiastes, and for the author and the teacher of this book, and how we can learn so much from them that it's amazingly applicable to our lives thousands of years later. So Lord, I pray that this wouldn't just fall on empty ears, that we wouldn't just go back to life as normal, that we wouldn't just say, I'm going to be the anomaly, I'm going to keep chasing after the things that don't matter. But God, we would lean into you. We say, God, help us to focus on the things that do matter. Give us the courage to do that. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Thanks for tuning in. This concludes today's message. New sermon podcasts are uploaded by Tuesday of each week. We'd also love to invite you to our live gatherings each Sunday at 10 a.m. Our gatherings are also streamed live on YouTube and Facebook each week. On behalf of the Canvas Church team, we hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you next time.